Hello. So we're going to be reading Job chapter 6. Uh, the heading in my Bible here is just titled, it says Job, and that as him speaking, my complaint is just. So we've got this chapter where he's kind of giving his perspective on what he's saying. The chapter before, we just kind of heard Eliphaz finish up and was drawing some conclusions that there must be something wrong going on if you're suffering like you are. You must be doing something wrong, and I know that's from a human standpoint, from our brains. We want to keep ourselves safe. So we want to try and we really do want to know if something is going wrong, that there's a reason for it. We know from previous chapters that Satan incited God against Job and got permission to cause all the trouble with Job, though Job did nothing wrong. So Job did nothing to cause his current distress. It is Satan coming against him, according to this narrative. So that's something spiritually that Job and his friends are not currently aware of, though they do know that God could prevent this if he wanted to, the suffering Job is going through. The other pieces here in the little subtitles for this chapter, it says Job shows that his complaints are not without cause. So we'll get into that. In verse 8, it points out that he wishes for death, in which he is assured of rest and comfort. So in other words, death right now is looking pretty good to him because of how much he's suffering. So that kind of just puts things in perspective for the reader, and for his friends, that how much he's going through. He's really wanting to be heard, it seems, and we'll look at that too. Verse 14 states that he reproves his friends' unkindness. So now he's actually pointing out that they could be doing a better job as friends. And so I know some of us might find ourselves in those positions. I know I've had some troubling times. I typically have a lot of wonderful people around, almost to the detriment in the other way, where they're really willing to see the good that I've done, even in cases when I feel like maybe my situation's kind of boogered up because of something I've done. I've had people on the opposite end that will be kind, even though in my own mind I've probably deserved some of the uncomfort that I've created for myself. But that wasn't the case with Job. He didn't do anything. It's clear in the narrative that he did nothing. He was blameless. He didn't cause any of this grief for himself. This is a spiritual thing that was happening. All right. So that's important points to keep in mind. But we've got Job answering verse 1. Then Job answered and said, "Oh, that my grief were fully weighed, and my calamity laid on it with scales." I think in this case, he's starting this with this, like, could we get a measurement here, so people can see just how bad this is? Because he's experiencing it, nobody else is, but can we just measure it just to show it off? And maybe he's seeking for some understanding there from his friends. Verse 3, "For then it would be heavier than the sand of the sea." That's hyperbole. He's exaggerating to make a point here. "Therefore, my words have been rash." So he's saying, okay, because of this discomfort, I might not be speaking according to how I normally talk. I'm in my distress. I might be saying things that don't quite make perfect sense. At least I know that you could probably find fault in my current condition as far as how I'm acting. However, it's because of how bad things are. And I think that's something that most of us can relate to. We've all been in distress at some point or the other. And because we're trying to get that situation corrected, we may have said or done things that we wouldn't have normally done. I know I've always heard, like, the real person is the person that's under stress, that's in a difficult situation. Like, that's the real person. I don't necessarily know if I agree with that. I think the real person is the person whose needs are met under that stress. So anybody whose needs are not met, that's not the real person, in my opinion. That's the person who's rash, the person who's probably not making the best decisions, as Job is saying that right now his speech probably isn't as good as it could be. Verse 4, for the arrows of the Almighty are within me. My spirit drinks in their poison. So there he does confirm from his viewpoint that God is coming against him. There's no understanding, at least in this chapter, that there's an evil spirit that's orchestrating all this. So he goes on to say, the terrors of God are arrayed against me. Verse 5, does the wild donkey bray when it has grass, or does the ox low over its fodder? Once again, we come back to need. I've got a kitten in the house, and she's got her own little room that she can run around in, so we know she's safe at night. But in the morning, if she's run out of food or water, we hear meowing, we hear complaint, and it's kind of cute, but it also reminds us not to forget about her. And a lot of times we go in, and either one or the other, the food or both, the water is gone. In other words, she's saying, hey, I've got a need here. I think that's what Job is saying. Would I be talking like this? Would I even be opening my mouth if there wasn't a reason, if I didn't need something? Verse 6, can flavorless food be eaten without salt? Or is there any taste in the white of an egg? The white of an egg here, I just heard something that was the best that the scholars could do with that interpretation, because the actual word there for whatever this object is, or whatever this food source is, it's more like, instead of white would be slime of whatever that food was. Egg is the best guess, but more than likely it was not an egg. But anyway, to the point that he's making, he's losing his appetite, I think, is what this is saying. Can flavorless food be eaten without salt? Or is there any taste in the white of the egg? In other words, my situation has caused me also that my need cannot be met. Because see, we saw before, we're talking about animals that are calling out because they have a need for food. I don't necessarily know that he's saying he needs food, but what he is saying is, I can't even access the things that I need because of my situation's so bad. But in this analogy, he's saying, my soul refuses to touch them. They are as loathsome food to me. The things that he would normally be able to do, he can't do. The access that he would normally grant himself to meet his need, he can't bring himself to do that because how his situation's going. So this is a very distraught man right now. Verse 8, oh, that I might have my request, that God would grant me the thing that I long for. And we'll find out now, verse 9, that he says that it would please God to crush me. So he's asking, just end me. That he would loose his hand and cut me off. But remember, God said, you're not going to kill Job. You can touch his body, because Satan was saying, no, I can get him to curse you. But who's going to curse you just when they lose their stuff? You touch a person's body, their skin, make them feel it, then they'll curse you. Obviously, Job's not doing that, but Job is asking God, just please, this is so hard, just end it right now, just to get some relief. It's important to know God, he's asking God to do it, understanding that God is the one who has the right to give life and take it. People do not have that right, according to God. Our lives are not our own. So I think in Job's righteousness, he's also not willing to do that. So he has to wait for God in this as well. If he's wanting relief as far as from death, he's looking to God for that as well. So I just think it's interesting to point that out. Then I would, verse 10, then I would still have comfort, though in anguish I would exult. He will not spare, for I have not concealed the words of the Holy One. So once again, we just talked about, even at requesting death, he's still waiting on God. He's still wanting to do what's right. Though he's hoping could get some relief. It kind of reminds me of Jesus in the garden asking the cup to be taken from him, but not my will, God, but yours be done. It's just one of these things, like, we can have our own thoughts about what things should happen or how things should be or what life should look like, but really the person who's really connected to God, who really wants to please God, is always considering what God wants, and to know that. And what we'll find out in Job's story, that everything gets better for him. And in the story of Christ, though he did suffer greatly, and we're gonna look at that here in a minute too, but though he did suffer greatly, the end is way better than the beginning. And I know this is a common human topic. Normally we're doing one of two things. We're either meeting our needs currently, or we're thinking about our future needs and meeting those. For example, if I have money now to spend and I spend it now, I'm meeting my current need, maybe, or I'm considering my current self versus my future self. If I hold on to that money, I'm saving up. I'm allowing my future self to be able to use that resource. So what we're doing, one of two things typically when we're making decisions. We're meeting an immediate need, which in a lot of cases, when we focus just in the immediate, and we ignore the future of what we might need, those end up being the more destructive kind of habits. I'm getting relief for myself now versus taking the extra time to do whatever it is I need to do, whether that's pray, meditate, eat right. I'm going to ignore my current desire because I'm thinking more about what things are going to be like in the future. I'm going to hold on to some of this resource because I'm going to think about my needs in the future, as opposed to being careless. So anyway, we're kind of off topic, but verse 11, what strength do I have that I should hope? And what is my end that I should prolong my life? So Job, once again, he's just going back around this corner. There's very little I can do here. I'm hurting, not to mention my whole life is disrupted. Where am I supposed to draw strength from to hope? And what would be the point of continuing to live? So he just said, God, I want you to take away my life so you can have some comfort, because really there's no reason right now. And so that's, once again, that could be another conversation people have with themselves when things start to get hard. We forget that God is unlimited, that he can do wonderful things. And in Job's case, all this is happening without cause to him. It's very confusing for him and for his friends. But he's really wondering, like, what's the point now? Everything's gone. Verse 12, is my strength the strength of stones? In other words, am I a statue? Am I stoic here? Or is my flesh bronze? In other words, like, these things aren't impacting me, like I don't have feelings. Of course, that's rhetorical. He does. He's in a lot of pain because he's not stone and he's not bronze. 13, is my help not within me? And is success driven from me? Just pointing out again that things are not going well for him. Verse 14, to him who is afflicted, kindness should be shown by his friends, even though he forsakes the fear of the Almighty. 15, my brothers have dealt deceitfully like a brook, like the streams of the brooks that pass away, which are dark because of the ice, and into which the snow vanishes. When it is warm, they cease to flow. When it is hot, they vanish from their place. In other words, in the winter, when you're not needing that extra liquid, when it could, it could be frightening to get stuck in water in the winter. It's deceitful, and in the summertime, when it's hot and you do need that water, now it's gone. So, though his friends potentially have the resources that can meet the needs, they provide them out of season, or they're not, when he didn't need them, they probably would have provided, but now that he does need it, there's no resource from them, I think, that's what he's saying. Verse 18, the paths of their way turn aside. They go nowhere and perish. 19, the caverns of Tema look. The travelers of Sheba hope for them. Once again, it's just the brooks. He's reiterating this point. They are disappointed because they were confident. They come there and they are confused. In other words, like they're used to this place having a certain resource and there's nothing there. In Job's mind, his friends have what he needs, but they're not showing it. It's not there. He can't find it. Verse 21, for now you are nothing. You see terror and are afraid. And I think this, I mentioned it before, but he's looking at his friends and they want to make sense of life, in my opinion. They see Job, who does everything right, and his situation's bad. They have to have an answer for it, because if it can get bad for Job, guess what? It can get bad for any of us. Because if living right is the way to make things work for you, then Job is the one to show us how to do that, because when you read about him, he did everything right. Not to mention God said he was upright and blameless. If God's saying that, then you're right. There are other passages in the Bible that referenced him, that he would be the only one to save himself based on his righteousness, not his children, not anybody close to him, just himself. Meaning, he's able to live in a way that pleases God and that would garnish him favor. But his friends are seeing that. They're seeing that all that's stripped away from him now. All that favor is gone, it seems. And they want to find an answer for it. They don't understand the spiritual dynamic, but they're afraid. And I think Job's right about that. And he's just said to them, you're nothing, like that brook that disappeared. You're nothing. You have nothing for me. You're afraid. You're trying to figure things out for yourself. That's why you're talking the way you are. 22. Did I ever say, bring something to me, or offer a bribe for me from your wealth? In other words, did I request anything from you? Why are you here? Or deliver me from the enemy's hand, or redeem me from the hands of the oppressors? 24, teach me and I will hold my tongue. Cause me to understand where I have erred. So back to your point, if I've done something wrong, show me. I'm not afraid of the truth. I just don't know where it's at. How forceful are right words, but what does your argument prove? Do you intend to rebuke my words and the speeches of a desperate one, which are as wind? So he's going back to this now too, that, I think his concern that that he's speaking rashly, that his speeches are as wind. I did want to go and read a little bit from Isaiah 53, because I'm looking at his situation and I want to show from a biblical standpoint, it's not uncommon for people to take this stance that the person who's suffering is the person who did something wrong. So we've got some characters in the Bible like Moses and Job, who are known for their closeness with God and their righteousness. And then we've got Jesus, who is the epitome, because he is God's son. He is considered God in the flesh. So you can see that brought out in the Bible. And so he's essentially he's also blameless, and we've got this prophecy in Isaiah that speaks about him. So I'm going to read this to talk about Christ, because I think that's important, but also to see what happens and what some of the prophecy says about what the people who are perceiving Christ, what they thought about him. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed him stricken. Just like Job, they felt like he was being punished by God, smitten by God and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. From a spiritual standpoint, that's what's happened, and he's taking our punishment on himself. The chastisement for our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. All we, like sheep, have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He was led as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth. He was taken from prison and from judgment, and who will declare his generation? For he was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgressions of my people he was stricken. And they made his grave with the wicked, but with the rich at his death, because he had done no violence. Nor was any deceit in his mouth, yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him. He has put him to grief. When you make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed. He shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. He shall see the labor of his soul and be satisfied. By his knowledge my righteous servant shall justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore I will divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors. And he bore the sin of many, and he made intercession for the transgressors. But we see there at the beginning, we see the things that were happening to Christ that shouldn't have happened, because he didn't have any deceit in his mouth. He was righteous, but it was for a purpose. And we're looking at Job now, someone who's righteous, someone who's doing what God wants, even though it's tough. Even to the point where he's not saying, I'm going to end my own life. He's still waiting on God for that. So just wanted to point all that out. 25, how forceful are right words, but what does your arguing prove? Verse 26, do you intend to rebuke my words and the speeches of a desperate one, which are as wind? In other words, like, that you're taking the wrong angle here. I'm in distress. I'm not at my best, and you're arguing with me. That's not what friends do. 27, yes, you overwhelm the fatherless, and you undermine your friend. Verse 28, now therefore be pleased to look at me, for I would never lie to your face. In other words, he's saying I'm not, everything I'm saying, as far as I know, is true. He's not trying to be deceitful. Verse 29, yield now, let there be no injustice. Yes, concede my righteousness still stands. At least say that you believe me, you know. At least acknowledge you don't have any evidence here that I did something wrong. Tell me here that you understand where I'm coming from. Verse 30, is there injustice on my tongue? Cannot my taste discern the unsavory? And that completes chapter 6. So next we'll do chapter 7. Thank you again for your attention while I read through this verse by verse and give just some commentary. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.